estribando en esto que dice de los desafíos que tiene la cadena, va a ser bueno recibir la presentación de Mónica Schwass, integrante de New Zealand Merino Company, y la charla se titula 20 años diferenciando y agregando valor a las lanas merino. Así que si tienen por ahí la presentación.
Hello, I'm Mónica Schwass, and I'm the Future Farming Manager at the New Zealand Merino Company. Thank you for having me here today to talk about the last 20 years of differentiating and adding value to merino wool, as well as being able to cover off as what we see as the future of the merino industry. New Zealand Merino is a wool marketing and innovation company. We are based here in Christchurch, New Zealand, and we also have an office in Melbourne, Australia now. We represent over 600 growers, so while we originated in the merino space, we also now represent strong wool growers, and we cover New Zealand, Australia, and also South Africa now. We have over 100 brands that source wool from us, and we have about 60 people in our New Zealand Merino team that are based both in New Zealand and Australia. So to go back and give you some history, this was how all wool was sold in the 1950s. It left the farm gate, it was sold by auction, and that was the last a farmer ever saw of it. They had no idea where that wool ended up. However, at this time, the wool price was relatively good, and it was expected that the world population would continue to grow, so more people meant more clothes, and therefore more wool was needed. And so sheep farmers around the world felt relatively confident at this point in time. However, what actually happened was this. Yes, the world population continued to grow, but the demand for wool suddenly plummeted. And this coincided with the development of synthetic materials. Suddenly, clothes could be produced much cheaper and faster than ever before, and so the demand for wool dropped. In New Zealand alone, we estimated that we were losing about 4,000 sheep per day from the industry. So, at this point, our merino growers wanted change. They were sick of selling their wool into the auction where they had no control over the price or the purchaser. They had worked hard all year long to grow a beautiful fleece of wool, and yet it was a gamble come auction day what they would get paid. They had no control. And so in the late 90s, the New Zealand Merino Company was formed by these growers. So, to change the system, they had to go from this auction price-taking system to what we call market shaping. They had to identify who their customers were or who their consumers were and grow their wool to meet the right specifications. So this involved forming deep relationships with the customers who were buying the wool and then delivering a product that they needed to the right specifications. At the same time, there was a whole new category being created. Icebreaker was pioneering the outdoor active space. Traditionally, merino had been used in fashion clothing or suiting, yet Icebreaker saw merino being used as sportswear or lifestyle wear and suddenly opening up whole new uses for merino wool. To also do this price-taking to market shaping transformation, we had to put in place long-term forward contracts. The creation of the long-term forward contracts meant that growers knew who was buying their wool. They knew what specifications they had to produce, and they knew what they were going to get paid for it. On the other hand, the brands, they knew exactly where the wool was coming from. They knew it would be delivered to a certain quality, and they also knew what they were going to have to pay for it. So with this new long-term forward contract model, both growers and brands had certainty of price, and they could both remain economically viable. At New Zealand Merino, we work with the best growers and the best brands, and we create a deep relationship to ensure we're adding value to both of these parties. We currently work with about 75% of the merino wool clip from New Zealand, and due to increasing demand, we've expanded into Australia and South Africa. The other key differentiator between what we do versus what you can buy on the commodity market is ZQ, our accreditation program. ZQ was launched in 2007, and it was initially very focused on animal welfare practices. At this time, there was a lot of backlash around mulesing, and so together with our growers, we were able to completely phase out this practice. The market was prepared to pay more for wool that was non-mulesed, and so hence we saw the movement away from the practice. Last year, we launched version 5 of ZQ, and this now covers not only animal welfare, but also environmental sustainability, social responsibility. It covers the fibre quality, the fibre traceability, and it is all audited by a third party. So we have moved from this old linear supply chain model where it is not very transparent, where there is a winner and a loser in every transaction, to one that is much more innovative and collaborative. With our new model, we put the consumer in the centre, and we're able to feed insights directly back to our growers so they can remain relevant and continue to sell their wool. As I mentioned earlier, we are now working with over 100 brands, all buying ZQ wool. They want assurance about how the wool was produced. The brands we work with range from the likes of Allbirds and Icebreaker through to fashion brands such as Loro Piana. And now, as I mentioned, we are also working with strong wool brands such as IKEA and Bremworth. So the current model has gotten us to where we are today. But there is this new wave of consumers, the conscious consumers, who want to buy products that are contributing to a better world. And they want proof that these products are doing good things. In 2020, during the first COVID lockdown, we saw consumers double down on this trend as we all became acutely aware of our impact on the planet. People wanted to return to better. We didn't want to just go back to the old way of doing things. And at the same time, we saw the evolution of this concept called regenerative agriculture. Well, it had been around a long time, but it suddenly hit the mainstream media. People were looking for solutions. Sustainability wasn't enough anymore, as sustainability was leading us towards a climate crisis. And so this concept of regeneration suddenly hit the mainstream media. People wanted to give more than they take, and headlines in Vogue were appearing, movies were being made. And so at the same time, we realized that for us to stay relevant, we had to do something here in New Zealand. And so we brought together our brands, our growers, our key scientists and experts, and we tried to figure out what it looked like for us here on farm in New Zealand and in the market. We had to collaboratively work on this, and we had to define it for ourselves in a way that was going to drive meaningful change. Yes, we needed to keep evolving and improving our practices, but we had to do it in a way that was relevant to us. And so we launched our new regenerative wool program. We launched it to our growers via Zoom as we were still in lockdowns. I think we were hoping to get around 20 growers to sign up to this new opt-in program, and we were blown away as we had over 150 sign up within the first few weeks. So behind our new ZQRX wool program, our regenerative wool program, is our regenerative index. So this is a framework which recognises where a grower is currently and provides a pathway for continuous improvement. We wanted to recognise that while regen had typically been about environmental practices, the animals and the people are just as important, as it's about whole farm systems and driving meaningful change across whole farm systems. We also wanted to recognise that our growers were already some of the best in the world. They were meeting one of the highest standards, ZQ. And so we wanted to celebrate all the work they were doing that went on above and beyond the ZQ standard. Ultimately, that is what regeneration is about. It is about continually striving to do better. And we know that that aligns with our growers' philosophies. They want to continually strive to do better, as they want to leave their land in a better state for future generations. This framework allows us to capture that information, to tell those stories, and to extract extra value for them. So as of this week, we have 526 growers now signed up to the ZQRX program. We have visited 319 of them and gone through a full assessment to document them on the framework. And we have 23 brands committed to sourcing from ZQRX. So while ZQRX and the Regenerative Index is about whole farm systems and continuous improvement across whole farm systems, for different brands, there will always be different priorities. And through this new system, we are able to differentiate and deliver to those goals. So for example, Allbirds has a carbon number on every single one of their products, and their main focus is to bring that carbon number down as part of their commitment towards the environment. So we are working with our growers to first measure their carbon emissions and then to reduce these. So in order to do that, we've recently partnered with a technology company in San Francisco, the USA. This company is called Actual, and they are allowing us, or they are helping us to measure our growers' carbon emissions and then to model out the mitigations which will work for individual growers. So for a grower, for us to first measure their number, we need to know what their property boundary is, the outline of their farm. From there, we need to understand their emission sources. So their emissions on farm will largely be from their sheep, cattle, fertiliser and fuel. Next, we are able to overlay maps to understand what sinks they have on farm. So what areas of vegetation they have that are sequestering carbon. This allows us to come up with a net carbon footprint. From here, we are able to look at opportunities for reducing that footprint. So we have, as you'll see, we can have the starting point, and then we look at how we can increase the carbon stored in vegetation, increase the carbon stored in soil, and other emissions reductions opportunities, driving that number as low as we possibly can. So as with Actual, our technology partner, we are starting to look at some of these reduction opportunities. So the opportunity for new regeneration on farm, the opportunity for multi-species pastures, or less fertiliser usage. Ideally, we'll provide a suite of options for growers to reduce their emissions. And so, for example, on this farm, the recommendation is that they do some native revegetation as well as some regenerative management. When we look at our spread across New Zealand, it gives us an idea of the impact we can have. So all of the pink area on this map is where the ZQRX farms are. When we all work together, we can have huge change. And so while I've talked largely about our partnerships in the climate space and the work we're doing in the climate space, we are continuing to build partnerships with different companies to support all aspects of the ZQRX index. We have also recently partnered with the Savory Institute to help us to quantify what's happening in terms of soil health and land health. And we will continue to build more of these partnerships to support us. And finally, we want to celebrate our growers. who are our actionists. These are the people that are on farm every day, that are improving the environment, that are looking after the animals, that are giving back to their local communities. And so they are the champions, and we want to acknowledge them. Thank you very much for your time.